So I just want to carve a little bit off the back of this. And I think I'll just use my trusty finger planes to do that. This is not carving easy, I can tell you. Very, very, very hard wood. If you put a straight edge on there and hold it to the light, you can see where your high and low spots are, and you can work those out. So I'm going to go cut off the tail end of this now, and I'll be right back. There you can see it's fit up pretty doggone well. It may look like it's sitting up proud, but it's really not. If you lay the fingerboard on here, you can see that it's pretty tight to the top. Everything's just about right. All is right with the world. All right, I've been trying to make some more executive decisions on this. It would be actually easy to put a truss rod in from here and adjust it from here, but in my opinion, this much of your truss rod is wasted when you do that. And it's also a weaker truss rod because you've got a really, really long piece of steel and you're pulling on it from this far back. I mean, you could reach in there with some weird tool and do it, but geez, that's a lot more complicated. So I'm thinking of anchoring it right here and doing a traditional truss rod with a truss rod cover. And if you do that, then this is the only part that a truss rod works on anyway. And now you've got that part covered, and you've got it covered with the shortest rod possible, which is a stronger rod in my opinion. I think that's the way we're going to go. So this area here, I'm just going to fill it. That is not an error in such, because I would have cut it that way anyway, because you have to cut it on the table saw. But now that I'm not going to use this, I'm going to go ahead and fill it up to the body line at least. Okay, I've got the little filler piece made. I've got glue down in there already. I even put a little glue on the filler piece, and now I'm forcing it into the end here and making the end match up right here, and it looks good to me. A little more than I needed, I guess. But when you start forcing it down in a tight fit like that, that glue starts going everywhere. And while this is setting up, I'll start making the actual truss rod. Because we don't buy nothing off the rack. We make everything. Except for the fretboard. Caleb just reminded me. And that's true, and I have made those also, but I do typically just buy my fretboards cut anymore, because it makes no sense to spend all the time cutting all those slots when you can buy it so cheap. And I would even do that if I thought I could make it better, but I can't make it any better either, so there's just no reason to do it. It's the next morning, so we've got, just for a time scale, we started this Monday evening just gluing up this neck. And when I say evening, it was late afternoon, you know, probably in the 3:30, 4 o'clock time frame. So then we worked on it pretty much all day yesterday. And now hopefully we can get this thing nailed up today, but it's still gonna require quite a bit of work. I've made a little piece that's gonna go in under the truss rod here, like this, just a filler, that's all it is. And so I'm going to put that in here. I believe that worked just fine. Now I'm going to make the top piece for this that'll fit this curve. Now I've already sized this piece to fit the slot, and basically I have clamped the piece to the rod by just tightening this nut here in between there, because it's really hard to hold this. I think that worked pretty well. And now I can saw that profile into that. And basically that profile pushes this rod down in there, and then when you tighten the rod, it lifts it in the middle. That's all a truss rod does, nothing more than that. Well, I have made the little filler piece. I've cut the profile. You saw how I traced it. I cut it on the bandsaw, and I laid it in there, and it lays in there just perfectly. Everything seems to fit up just perfect. What I do now most of the time is take and just trace this line here. Now I can saw that line off. I'll leave the line just a little bit so it will still be slightly proud of this. And then I can put glue on both sides of this, stick it in here, clamp it down, and we're ready to go. In an hour, we'll be ready to move on. Since the tip of this has gone AWOL because it was clogged, I'll have to make a big mess here, just as big a mess as I can possibly make. That always makes it easier. You never want to do this and not make a mess. That's key to understand when you're doing these kinds of delicate jobs. Alright, and the only thing I'm going to do is wipe off the bottom of this stick, because I don't really want any glue on the bottom, and what little bits there won't stick enough to the truss rod to care about, I don't believe. So now we've got it on both sides, and I can clamp her down in there, and we should be good to go. While this is setting up, I will be working on the fretboard, so we'll move to that right now. Well, my friends, we've got my little roller out here, and I'm running the medium guitar fret wire through it. We're going to put a little curly cue in these frets so that they'll fit that radius fingerboard pretty well. And on this, more is better. You really want a little more curl than the radius in your fingerboard. So if the fingerboard has a radius, you want to match it and then a little bit more. That keeps the ends of the frets down when you do that. Ask me how I know these things. When you don't do it, you wish you had. That's how I know these things. Again, I could run both of them through at the same time, but I find it just as easy to run the one back and forth until I get it where I want it, and then run the other one back and forth till I match it. It's not rocket science anyway. It don't have to be a perfect match. I didn't have to take that out of there to check it, but right now that's just a tiny bit more than the radius of this, and only a tiny bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and run it through one more time. That's quite a bit more. I can see daylight under it fairly good now. We'll go with that. I'll run this other piece through. It always takes more than one piece to do a fingerboard. But there's the two of them together. They radius almost matches. It doesn't really matter if they do though. Now we will start putting this in here. I'm going to do this one in the method where the binding will go up over the ends of the fret. That's my preferred method. I find it actually a little easier to do than the other way because I don't have to stop and cut the tang off of every fret. Anything you can do to save time and money, and has the benefit of it covers the fret ends so you don't feel those. I like that much better. And the way we'll do this is we'll leave it long like this, tap it into place with the plastic hammer, and I'm hoping you can see what I'm doing here because it's hard to do the work and watch the camera and get the light right and all that stuff when really all I care about is getting the work done. I just take my side cutters and cut it off as short as I can, go right to the next one. This method, you don't waste any fret wire. Not that that's that big a deal, but I see no point in wasting anything if you don't have to waste anything. It's not a money issue, it's just a resource issue. And yes, I could have put the dots in here already, but the holes were already pre-cut, and so I don't have a real problem with doing that later either. There's a million different ways to skin every cat, and as long as you get it skinned, it don't really matter. I'm really trying to work as fast as I can without a hurry up and screw up is really what I'm doing. But where else could you bring a guitar, stay in a rental retreat, and get a new neck made for it while you wait? Amen. That was Eddie in the background there. He said amen. But you can see how fast fretting a fretboard is if you use the right procedure. If you wonder what kind of mallet this is a leather working mallet, and it's got it's weighted, it's got weight in it, and it's got the plastic heads. And it's as old as I am, nearly. I got that when I was a teenager, when I used to do a lot of leather working when I was a kid. You can see it's still got a broken head. I need to go in and make me a new one on my metal lathe with some plastic, but I just haven't got time. I really couldn't think of a better fret hammer though, because it doesn't dent the wire at all, being plastic, and it's got enough weight to drive them in. And there you can see the whole fretboard fretted in that little length of time right there. We'll probably speed the video up a little bit, but that's okay. It only took 5 minutes, I don't know, 10 minutes at the most. I doubt it took 10 minutes. But there you go, there's all the frets. Now I'll just take this over to my belt sander, run it like this, and it'll make each end perfectly square and flat with this, and then I can put the binding on this. Well, as you can see, I've got this binding here, and I've got it sized. I cut the binding down to about 55 thousandths thick. I had allowed about 100 thousandths on each side of the neck for this, so that should give me a little bit of trimming room on the neck itself. In other words, I should be able to knock a little bit of that neck off and make it come up to this binding. This is the binding made by Mr. John Manura, buddy of mine on YouTube. Check out AccuSlice. I'm going to cut it off just with the side cutters here, and I'm cutting it plenty long so that I can 45 this later. But right now, I just want to get it glued on here, and it seems to fit my mold pretty well, although it's a little bit loose up here. I'll probably have to slide in some razor blades or something to take up some space. So, I'll lay that one there, lay this one here, and I'll go ahead and get some glue on this. I found my missing glue bot end. It was hiding like everything does on me. I've had that problem my whole life. Stuff just hides on me. I can't find it for nothing. But you know what they always say? It's always in the last place you look. There's some logic to that. I guess you'd be kind of an idiot to keep looking after you found it. This glue spreader I'm using is really the best glue spreader on the market. You can't get one any better than that. Okay, the trick of this is keeping everything pressed down. You would think it would do that, but it always lifts. The fretboard always has a little bit of spring in it, because when you drive those frets in, the fretboard cups like this. So it's keeping it all down and keeping it all flat on the bottom is the trick to doing a good glue up on this binding like this. And it's really hard to do, actually. No matter how good you think you've done, you almost always go, ah, doggone, it raised a little bit, you know. Anyway, I'm going to put these clamps on there because this one's raising pretty much. And these clamps have plastic on them, so it's not going to hurt anything. So I'll clamp that down in the middle first. That holds it down. And then the other thing I want to do is go through here and push the binding itself down, because the binding likes to lift up. Okay, and then as I said, it's a little loose up here, so I'm going to slide in a couple of razor blades to tighten it up. And so I'm going to put a rubber band around this end here just to make sure it's tight. So now I'll let that set up for a little while and we'll move on to the next thing. Well, my friends, I'm not sure which order we'll put all these videos in for Eddie, but this is his banjo he brought along. It's a gold tone. Decent looking banjo. It's got some good hefty weight. That's pretty much an indication of a decent banjo. You know, it's got to weigh something. Those light banjos, they typically are considered to be a lesser banjo. Now, I don't consider myself a banjo expert, but I know quite a bit. I've set up a lot of them over the years. This one does feel pretty heavy. Another indicator of quality on a banjo is how many hooks are around the rim here. And this one's got its fair share, so it looks like it's pretty good. Fewer is not quite as desirable. More is better in that case. The head feels good and tight. You know me, I like to look down them, and the neck angle looks pretty good. If anything, the neck angle's a little bit much this way. That just means that you need a taller bridge, and he does have a fairly tall bridge on this. So, you know, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That puts a little more pressure on the top, gives you a little more volume, which most banjo players, well, they're really not hurting for volume anyway. You know how us mandolin players are always wanting to turn the banjo player down a little bit. This looks like a pretty decent outfit. He said it's pretty much brand new. He just wanted me to go over it and make sure it's set up well. So let's go turn the camera down here and see what it looks like once we tune it up a little bit. Well, I can't find a thing wrong with this banjo, so I've just got it up to pitch. You can hear it there. I've checked the intonation. The intonation's very good. I don't find a buzz anywhere. The action's crazy low, which is good. I mean, you know, it'd be better be low than high. The action up at the nut's very good. And so for my opinion, or my 2 cents worth, if it ain't broke, I don't fix it. So I'll talk it over with Eddie and see what he says. But as far as I'm concerned, this is a very nice banjo. It's set up very well. It's really done pretty dang good. It's just about everything I would do to it. I mean, if I'm being super critical, you could probably put a little bit more pressure down right here at the tailpiece with this little knob here, and push that down a little bit, and then tune it back up to pitch. I mean, you'd have to loosen the strings to do that, but that would be about the only minor criticism I can find. Really, it's otherwise it's dang good. Let me show you, for those of you who don't know too much about these kinds of tuning keys, they like to slip on you, and these don't seem to be slipping, but I mean but this kind of key likes to slip. And if they do slip on you, all you really have to do is tighten up that screw just a little bit. And when I say a little bit, I do mean a little bit. Don't go cranking down on it. It should not be as tight as you can get it. It's a friction deal. So you just turn it like a half a turn, see if it slips. If it's still slipping, turn it another quarter turn or so. You know, you'd sneak up on it. You do not tighten these down as tight as you can get them. That's not the idea of this kind of tuning key. So just so you know, that's what that screw's in the end for, is to increase the friction. Now some of these are also geared, and I don't think these are geared, but some of them also have gears in them too. So anyway, the point is, I just wanted to mention that about that screw. I do see that as a problem sometimes. The keys are slipping and they don't know what to do about it. All you really have to do is just tighten up that screw just a tiny bit. Like I said, sneak up on it. Don't try to be Hercules. Other than that, I can't really think of anything to talk about on this Banjo. It's a pretty nice looking Banjo, really. It's basically brand new. Ain't got a scratch on it. I probably ought to put it back in the case before I change that.
Now I'm going to go get some beeswax and wax this screw before I put it in, just to get it out of the way.
I'm going to plane these down now, these filler strips, and get it ready to put the fingerboard on this thing. I'm using the toothed plane because it's curly maple. As always, if there's a 50-50 chance, there's a 90% chance I start at it on the wrong direction. It likes to be carved one way, but let me rephrase that. This piece of wood doesn't want to be carved in either direction. So I guess I'll have to start in the middle and work my way out, because each way I start, it seems like it wants to chip. Yeah, this is really curly wood, and that, you know, if I would have had some plain maple to install there, I probably would have been better off putting that in there, but either way, I'll get it planed. And I'm sure that's my wife out there riding the four-wheeler that you can hear. I think Eddie has learned that I wasn't kidding about that my wife is not happy unless she's driving something that is burning gas. Or diesel, it doesn't really matter. But it has to be burning some kind of fuel. Don't you agree, Eddie?
Or hay.
Or hay, yeah. Yeah, it has to burn hay too, yeah. It can burn one of those three things. Good point, Eddie. I hadn't thought of the hay one.
Well, that turns into gas, don't it?
Yeah, I guess it does turn into gas, a different kind of gas. You know, us people, we have more fun than anybody. I think I'm going to get me a little grinder on my Dremel here and grind this down, because this is standing up just a tiny bit proud. I'm talking just a few thousandths, probably 5 or 6 thousandths. That ought to take care of that.
Well, Sugar Pie, you're going to get a new guitar. This one plays easier than that other one.
This fingerboard is unique in that it has 3 different size dots. I haven't really seen that before. I've seen 2 different size quite often. But this first one was bigger than these 3 here, and then these 4 back here were smaller yet. So there's 3 different sizes. And there wasn't one here at the 3rd fret. So I drilled a hole, and I'm going to put another big one here at the 3rd fret. I hope it fits the drill bit I used. I think I didn't even try it. I figure it should fit, and it does. But quite honestly, it's a little tight. But I think it'll go. There it is. The glue had it kind of airlocked there where it couldn't go down, because that's a really tight hole there on this one. I'm gonna go to lunch, and when I come back from lunch, this will all be dry enough to get this all attached and move on to the next step. Well, actually, now I think about it, I don't think I'd be rushing ahead and making a hurry up and screw up if I go ahead and get this glued to the neck too. So I may go ahead and do that too. I'll give that a little bit of thought to make sure I'm not getting ahead of myself, but I think I may go ahead and glue this on here too. I've decided to go ahead and glue this fingerboard on before I go out to lunch. I didn't bother filling this hole with epoxy, and the reason I didn't is because I've got that one really fitting tight. It's barely got any hole left, so there's no real big deal there. It ain't going nowhere, I can tell you that for sure. I didn't pin this one. I might regret that, but I don't think it'll slide enough to do anything. I'm putting a very thin coat of glue on it so that it'll tack up quicker. I may go ahead and put a real thin coat on this too. I have a mark here on the front where I want this to be. And I know I want this 14th fret to be lined up with the end of the neck too. So, and the neck is wider all the way around than this fingerboard. So as long as I get all of that straightened out, we should be good. As soon as you start putting the clamps on it, it starts moving though, that's for sure. That's a black and white guarantee every time. Putting them on light pressure until I get it clamped up pretty good. Can't remember if I showed this all clamped up or not, but there you go. It's all clamped up and it's ready to have the clamps removed. Now it's been about almost 2 hours. And so we're going to take the clamps off and move on to the next step. Cleaning up the neck after removing the clamps from the fingerboard. So I'm filing basically the width now down to the binding here. It helps if the vise stays put. And that will be close enough for the moment. What I'm going to do now is measure at some key points and take the thickness down to those key points, and then we'll smooth it out between those points. Well, we're getting much closer. I've taken the neck down to thickness on 2 places here. And now I'm bringing everything else between there down and rounding it off, making it smooth and small. And essentially what I have is a neck board. And down here, I have a neck smorgasbord. So there you go. That's my dumb humor for right now. I had to go back to the really rough rasp because I had a lot to remove. It's almost looking like a straight line between here and there now. A little bit of work yet, but it's getting close. Physically, this is the hardest part, but in terms of the overall build of the neck, this is actually very easy. Another little inclusion popped its head up right there, where we got out of them there for a while, and now that one popped back up. Oh, I'm sweating now. Alright, I think I'll move down to a smoother rasp, and then we'll go on from there. Here you can probably see where I've started cleaning up the binding and getting it down to size. And the way I do that is just take my half round file, double cut file, and knock down the biggest part of it. You got to be careful when you get to the top of that fret there, you stop there. Top of the fret here, you'll stop, and then you just knock it down in between there. And the whole time you're doing that, it looks bad until it doesn't. It'll, at some point there, you make that last stroke and it cuts it off and makes it nice and clean. So I've got a lot more of that to do. I'm not going to show all that either, but I just wanted to show you the technique. As I often do, I kind of did a few things off camera. This neck is just about as good as it gets right now. It is so slick. I mean, it's honestly hard to explain how slick that is. It is so slick. It's almost like ice skates on ice. It's that slick. It's smooth, and it's going to be beautiful. Once we oil that, that's going to wake up and look like $1 million. Now that little dark spot you see, that's just a natural inclusion. There's nothing I can do about that. Just the way it is. There's a couple of more natural inclusions on this side, but even those will look nice once they're oiled. I've still got a little bit of cleanup to do around the peg head, but we haven't put the veneer on it yet. And depending on the order that Melissa puts this all in, you haven't seen the inlay yet, and that's going to be kind of neat. I'll let Caleb design that. I said, Caleb, just go do it and surprise me, and so he did. I also put the little side position dots in there. You can see them in the binding, if this thing will focus and stay focused. There you go. And this is all real wood binding, and it's all that binding that John Manura gave us. And man, I'll tell you what, yeah, like I said before, once I started using real wood binding, there ain't no going back. That plastic stuff's for the birds. This real wood stuff is just beautiful. And you can't feel it, it just is there. It's like there's nothing there, you know. So we're about done for the day. I'm going to clean out this hole right here for the truss rod because I should have done that ahead of time and I forgot. But you know, I did. That's the one thing that so far on this, I haven't really got ahead of myself until that right there. And I did kind of get ahead of myself there. So I'm going to take a Dremel tool, get in here and clean this all out. It would have been easier if I'd have done that before I put the rod in. Then we're just going to glue the peg head veneer on here and clean that up, and hopefully sometime in the morning you'll get to see what this thing looks like all finished. Well, I was in a hurry up and get her done mode this morning, so I didn't turn the camera on. But I've got the holes drilled, I've thinned down the peg head, I've moved this curve back so that the tuning keys can lay flat in there, because that curve was encroaching on the key, but it's not now. I also thinned it down so that the key would be sticking through the proper amount, and I believe that that is good also. So we're doing pretty good. Well, my friends, we're just about ready to put the tuning keys on here. I've already got the holes, the little holes drilled for the screws, everything. But before I do that, I think I'm going to go ahead and put the oil, or kind of an oil wax, on this. We're not going to actually apply any finish to this. It's just going to be an oil wax finish. That's mainly because of the time constraints and everything, but it's also my preferred finish on a neck because it's slicker than snot on a doorknob. I mean, it really makes them play well. And I just think it looks rich too, so I like it myself. This stuff here is environmentally friendly, so you can apply it with your fingers. Look how pretty that turned already. Can you see that? Hopefully get the light in the right place. Oh my gosh. There's before and there's after. Oh my gosh. It's going to be gorgeous. Or as I often say, it's even better than great. Now, we don't have a heel cap figured out on this yet, and we may not even put a heel cap on it. I don't know, because we've run into a lot of time here and effort, and it don't look too bad the way it is. So we may just leave it that way. I don't know. We'll figure that out as we go here. Rubbing the oil on the binding all the way around. That really sets it off now. This is where it starts to look like something. It looked pretty good before, but now it looks really good. Now that's a nice looking neck. Look at that, all the figure in there and everything. Now it's got those little dark spots, but again, that's Mother Nature, you know. I can't do anything about that. But now let's wake this up here. That's going to look gorgeous too when we wake that up. Oh my goodness. It's just like it turned the light on. It's really just brightened it up. It just looks gorgeous. Look at that. Isn't that nice? I'm not going to do the fretboard right now because we've got a lot more work to do yet on the setup, and you know, we've got to put it together and get strings. I don't even just kind of hope it's close. I think it will be from the measurements and everything I've taken, but you really don't know till you know on this kind of thing. I haven't made a nut yet, but that is gorgeous and then some. I mean, that really is a pretty neck. It'd be hard pressed to find one any prettier than that. Well, I thought I'd show you again the little bit of a technique for putting these keys on. You know, you've seen this before, but I always like to put wax on the screws, especially in a really hard wood like this. You know, a soft wood, you don't need to worry about it too much. But on these hard woods, and especially something like bird's eye maple, you better wax those screws or you'll twist them off. And it makes a huge difference on how easy they go in the wood. You can see I'm not stressing to get this down in there. It's going in fairly well. Of course, I got the holes the right size too. That makes a lot of difference. I noticed a number of people commented on the last shop talk where I showed how to size your drill bit to your screws. And if you haven't seen that, you might want to go watch Shop Talk. I believe it was Shop Talk 21. If not, it was Shop Talk 20, where I showed how to size the screws. And if it wasn't 20, then it was 19. So there you go. I can't keep track. I got too many irons in the fire, folks. I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you. But anyway, you might want to check out that shop talk so you could understand how to size your drill bit properly to your screws. So those went in just fine, and they're in there really snug and tight. Be sure to wax every screw that you drive into a piece of hardwood the first time you drive it in, especially. Because I seriously have twisted screws off more than one time. I thought I might add something here about putting these on with the wax. Pretty much every time I comment that I put wax on the screws before I drive them in, numerous people will comment that they just use soap. Well, soap is fine, don't get me wrong, it's better than nothing, and especially if you're driving screws into just projects. I don't see a problem with soap too much. In projects meaning like a door frame or, a cabinet or something. But in instruments, I prefer to use wax, and the reason I prefer to use wax is the moisture thing. Wax isn't affected by moisture. Soap can be, and it can cause rust and corrosion and different things. So on instruments, I much prefer to use wax. So you can use either beeswax, which is what I'm using here, or paraffin. I really actually prefer the paraffin most of the time on screws, but the beeswax works really well too. So either one, and I've heard other people say they prefer the beeswax, so it doesn't really make too much difference as long as you do wax them. But you can sure feel a difference driving them in where they're waxed and unwaxed. And if you're really having trouble, you really ought to go to the next larger drill bit. These are going in pretty darn tight, and that's mostly because this maple is such a hard, tight grain type of maple. This bird's eye is. It's exceptionally hard. Probably wouldn't hurt if I had just a slightly larger drill bit on these. Well, I had to call in my assistant to assist because the hand thing kind of gave out on driving those screws in there. Those are beautiful tuning keys. Those are the Waverleys. These are the real pearl and gold tuning keys. This flower is, of course, some of the Osage orange cut right here on the farm. And the white is the maple. I still have to cut out the truss rod hole here, and we're going to have to put a truss rod cover on it. But right now, while Caleb is working on the truss rod cover, I'll work on the nut and try to get a nut made. Here's a piece of deer antler that I've just got rough sized at the moment, as you can see. Just trying to clean up this neck heel a little bit, and Eddie came to a conclusion here. Just listen. You know it's hardwood when sandpaper actually screeches like that, chatters like that. I mean, and it is. It's really hardwood. Fingernails on a chalkboard, anybody? I know some of you ran out of the room. I know that. Because I know that drives some people just absolutely bonkers crazy. Doesn't affect me at all. Well, we're going to go with that for right now. There's a little bit of a problem right there, unfortunately, and I may just make it match all the way across, or I may cover it with something. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, but we'll figure it out as we go. I'm just trying to get this thing moved along and get it set up and strung up at the moment. That's more important than that little minor detail. So here we go. We're going to put it together for the first time now that it's basically finished. Like I said, this thing was like fitting a neck to a pumpkin. It just had curves going every direction. And not to mention, you gotta figure that out, straighten out the stuff that wasn't straight, and you gotta get the neck angle right all at the same time. So it's kind of like a miracle here if this actually does work. Yes, I could use a power drill on this, but no, I will not do that. I've learned that the front of this needs to be tight before the back in order to get the neck alignment pretty close. And it's pretty tight. And the back doesn't really get as snugged up as tight. It's just kind of snug. It seems to give me my best alignment. Looky there, that looks like it was from the factory that way, don't it? Real good, real good. And I gotta tell you, looking down at the neck angle looks better than good, man. I mean, it looks real fine. Hope it plays real fine. I hope it works when we string it up. Like I said, you don't know till you know on this kind of thing. And we're gonna find out here in a few minutes once I get this nut made and a new saddle made. My friends, I'm going to interrupt the video right here real quick. I just want to let you know we do have an ending, and I want you to keep watching because you'll see Eddie and how much he enjoyed his stay and how much he appreciates the new neck. But we don't play it in this video. I just want to let you know that up front here. We are going to create another video where we're actually playing the guitar for quite a few songs. The reason we're doing it in a separate video is because if we do it in this video, we'll likely get demonetized. And after all that work, I'll be darned if I'm going to get demonetized over one or two songs. So go ahead and watch the rest of this video and then be watching for another video coming out very shortly with Eddie playing the guitar. Well, my friends, I just thought we ought to put a conclusion to all these videos here. We did a lot of work for Eddie this week. Eddie's been a great guy. We went out to lunch, and he's been hanging out in the rental retreat up there. What do you want to tell him about your experience this week?
I want to tell you, I came down and he did the impossible, folks. I'm telling you. He put a neck on this guitar, and I thought it was going to be easy, but it wasn't easy. I know it. And it turned out just gorgeous. just beautiful. I love it.
And the action is crazy low. We've got the action down at about 65 on the top and about 60 on the bottom. So that's about as good as it gets on an acoustic guitar without buzzing. And you can hear how loud it is. So
it's a great guitar. I love this guitar.
What do you think about the looks of it, with the neck and the peg head and all that?
Oh, I love it. It's gorgeous. I mean, it is beautiful.
Good. I'm glad you like it. Yeah, I thought it turned out pretty. That bird's eye maple, boy, it's hard to beat when it comes to stuff like that. Now, Eddie also, in addition to all of this that he brought all those instruments and everything, but he also brought a bunch of gifts. You talking about a super fan? I mean, he's also in my Patreon in addition. And here is what he brought in terms of my favorite gift right here. He brought a box full of deer antler. That is so awesome. I really can use the deer antler. We're always out. In fact, we're completely out until we got this. So this is awesome. Eddie also brought me a couple of instrument gifts. Look at this one here. It came with its own hubcap. It's Banjo, and boy, it's got a lot of tension hoops on it, so that generally indicates a real quality instrument when you get that many. That's got more than just about any I've ever seen, actually. And it's got a nice neck on it. It's an old one. How old do you think this is?
I have no idea.
Do you know who made this one by chance?
I think it's a Vega.
You think it's
I'm
a
not
Vega?
Sure. I think
it's a pretty cool old banjo. It's man, it's different, that's for sure. It's pretty cool. And then he brought another banjo here, and it also came with its own hubcap. So if I'm ever out on the road and I lose a hubcap, I know where to go to get one. So and now that I say that, this one's got as many as, or maybe more than that one, and these hooks. My gosh, I seriously don't think I've ever seen, especially two banjos with this many hooks. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, pretty cool. And it's got this is a handmade neck, it looks like, or a homemade neck. The inlays on this are, you can kind of tell. Very small neck, kind of neat looking. It's this one was also a 5-string, based on that little hole right there. But anyway, pretty cool. So we got some more banjo parts. Caleb's assisting here. And so he brought a whole bunch more banjo parts. I'm going to give you those back for now. And this thing here is pretty cool. I'll come and get it. And looky here, looky here, looky here. I guess you'd call this like a lap steel, or at least that's what I call it. Pretty cool. The Mike Aldridge, who was the dobro player for Seldom Seen, came to me one time, and he had one, similar to this. I don't even know the brand, to be perfectly honest with you, because it was so long ago. But anyway, it was a lap steel, and I built him a custom case for his lap steel. And this one here is a Fender. Says Fullerton, California, right there. And it looks like maybe it was adapted for legs, is what I'm guessing. Probably a stand of some sort, legs or something. And somebody's improvised and made a few knobs for it. That's pretty cool, pretty neat. I thank you, Eddie, very much.
Well, this is all stuff I had that I'm not ever going to do anything with. So
and he brought
this is the best place to bring it.
Well, thank you. He brought a bunch of other parts and miscellaneous things too. And not to mention, got a little knife from him that I still got in the package. It's just amazing. And I don't even remember what this box is full of. I think it's some more parts, isn't it?
Mostly parts for the banjo.
Mostly banjo parts, and he just kept going out to his car bringing stuff in. I mean, I'm telling you, it took 15 minutes just to carry all the stuff in. But Eddie, I've enjoyed having you here this week. You've been a perfect gentleman, and just enjoyed your company the whole time. And I hope that you're as happy with that thing as I felt like it turned out pretty darn good, considering that whole neck was just up here in pieces of wood. And matter of fact, it wasn't even that great a looking wood because it was so twisted. here's the other half of it, and I'll show you how twisted it is there. Maybe you can see how twisted it is if I get it in the right angle. Probably not. You probably can't really tell. Yeah, maybe that way you can kind of tell. It is the twistedest wood, and you know, basically I cut out his out of the same kind of twist and just put it back together, kind of book matched it as best I could. But it's some beautiful wood. It's a bird's eye maple, and very, 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 very hard. Really hard to work with.
Well, I sure couldn't be happier.
Well,
Very
great. I'm glad.
Even with setups on the other guitars and stuff.
What would you tell people about the rental retreat up there?
Oh, I love that rental retreat. That's not a room; it's a house.
Yeah, it is a house.
And it's nice. It's very nice.
Well, thank you.
Very well enjoyed.
My wife really did a good job on fixing that place up and decorating it and everything. It's really nice, I think. You know, and of course I'm prejudiced, but I think she did a really good job.
Well, I have really, really enjoyed myself.
Well, great, Eddie. I'm sure glad.
It's been a great 3-4 days. So.
I appreciate all your support on Patreon and YouTube and everything. So thank you very, very kindly.
Notification set when you send one out, I get it.
Well, we hope you all have enjoyed this very much, and we've enjoyed putting it together for you. So if you liked what you saw, be sure to click that thumbs up button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe, because we're on our way to 100,000 subscribers, and we're going to get there. Thank you for watching.